Hello and welcome back to the Ain't Dead Yet podcast. On today's episode, we are going to cover something that viewers, the audience, they've been asking about, they've been curious about. And specifically what we're going to talk about is the day challenge or the month challenge, 30-day challenge that you see numbers on Instagram, under my social media page, under Meet Mafia Brett's social media page. And people ask what that means and why we're doing it and kind of what those impacts have been. So we're going to discuss that today. With that being said, I want to welcome back Brett Ender. He's come on today. This is, he said, the hat trick, the third time.
The third time.
The third time he's been on the show, which is fitting because I feel like since this journey started, you've been along for the ride in so many ways. And same thing with this 30-day challenge. So just grateful to have you here, man.
Me too, man. I feel like as we're recording, that iconic quote of "Don't eat with people you wouldn't starve with" is like ringing through my brain, and I think it's just gonna be. I think it's gonna be a really cool time capsule to show our kids. And the challenge has absolutely changed my life. I feel like a different person a month and a half in. And I'm just excited to dig into it with you.
Absolutely, man. To give the audience a little bit of context on the challenge and where it came from or why it exists or what it is. So back in April of this year, so April 2024. There was an eclipse, and here in Central Texas, the eclipse was magnified, if you will. It got really, really dark. It was full coverage of the sun, and I was at a getaway cabin in, I think it was like close to Wimberley, Texas, but it was a getaway cabin way out in the woods, and chose to go there just to do a full reset, and to also utilize the eclipse as part of that reset. While I'm very strong in my faith in God, I'm also open to, like, the moon is real, right? The sun is real. The moon does have impacts because, I mean, we could talk about tides and stuff like that all day, but our bodies are 60, 70% water. So the pull of the moon does have something to do with how we feel and how we move, I think. So with that, when the eclipse came, it was like, okay, this is a good chance or a good opportunity for me to do a full reset. It's about 100 days from my birthday, which is July 19th, and my sobriety date. So it was like, gives me 100 days to see what I can really put out, like what can happen in 100 days. And so I wrote down on a piece of notebook paper, essentially the guidelines that I was going to follow for those 100 days. And to be honest, the first rendition kind of mocked or word for word was just like 75 hard, right? It was a couple workouts a day. I had in there to wake up at a certain time. There was a piece of information about like NoFap, so no pornography, no masturbation, which I failed at in that 100 days. And there was also a nutritional piece. Like that was it. So there was nothing in there about faith. There was nothing in there, no cold exposure. And we'll go through the list in a minute of what it is now, but that's kind of how it started. And I was just posting the number every day on my social media page. And I didn't really tell anyone what it meant. You know, they would ask and I'd be like, oh, I'll let you know when I'm done. I'll let you know when I'm done. And then when I wrapped it and people were asking about it, I told them like, well, I was doing this challenge. People were like, well, like, what was it? We would like to try it. We'd like to do it. And so between July 19th and August 1st, I wrote down or came up with what I thought to be the 11 best like daily principles or practices that I'd learned in the last 100 days that I thought would be impactful if it was going to be like a 30-day change your life type of approach. And I fully believe after doing it the first 30 days and now doing it again into this month that without question, it's changed my life. I think it's changed yours.
Yep.
And all I want to do is share it with people and tell them in the simplest form, this will change your life. Most of what's in here doesn't cost you a ton of time. It's not like I'm saying work out 7 hours a day. You don't have to run 10 miles a day. There's nothing like that. It doesn't say you can only eat fruits and vegetables. That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So really, anything in here in my mind that you don't want to do is just your justification for wanting to do things your way and really not wanting a hard reset. And I think that comes off as harsh, but a hard reset is harsh. It's not supposed to be comfortable. That's how it all started. to give the backstory on it. Before we jump into August 1st, though, I do want to take some time real quick and talk about where both of us were at July 31st. So do you want to kick that off where you were kind of at when this all started?
I would love to. And I was having some really interesting thoughts because I'm just reflecting back on, I remember seeing your initial count, and then you would post the count, and then you would show the mileage on Strava that you ran. And I think you and I were almost like ships passing in the night, where I was watching you like as a brother and as a friend ascend. And at the same time, I felt like I was just continuing to make steps backward, which is honestly, it's embarrassing. It's tough to admit. And I think a lot of that came from, you know, hey, you have this nutritional brand, you have this marketing agency, you have this supplement company. I think people just assumed that I was doing really, really well. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned through you organizing this 30-day challenge is that what success is to me is ultimately just chasing that feeling of my head hitting the pillow and just feeling like I squeezed the juice out of the lemon that day. And I trust that if I do those things, the score, any of these like artificial metrics that I think are deemed successful, whether it's finance, employees, whatever it is, I just think all that stuff will take care of itself, and God will provide if you chase that feeling and you achieve that feeling every single day. That's probably one of the biggest takeaways I've learned. Turning 30 on June 28th was a massive turning point for me. And so I kind of have two perspectives on time, which I incorporate into this 30-day challenge. Is one, I think that as you enter your late 20s and your early 30s, people stop viewing you as this like raw piece of clay relative to your potential, and they just start to judge you for your contributions to society in that moment, which I think is really important. So for me, that's kind of like when you think of the carrot and the stick, that's a little bit more of the stick. Like you're alive, like you have to start doing something and producing something. And dude, time is so short, man. It's like, you know, we're both in our 30s now. This whole year is flying by. Time is only going to continue to pass us by. And God has filled us with so much potential. So what are you going to do with that potential? And then the second perspective on time is that I do think that God has also programmed us with this unbelievably resilient software where you could burn it all to the ground 1,000 times over and then wake up 6 months later and be a multimillionaire from like literally from living under the bridge to the penthouse. I think we're that resilient too. And so when I turned 30, both of those things were in my mind, but I felt like I was still attached to these old corporate goals, these metrics of success. For whatever reason, this concept of like making $1 million by the time I turned 30 was just something that I continued to latch onto even while I was entrepreneurial. But I would give advice to people like, don't worry about money, focus on creation, focus on doing something that you feel truly aligned by God to do. But deep down, I was still like so attached to these artificial metrics. And when I turned 30, I was really addicted to nicotine and to Kratom. And so I decided to cold turkey stop those things the day before my birthday. And I think that Kratom and nicotine were these artificial stimulants that almost insulated me from like the true internal feelings that I had about myself, where I'm like, well, if I'm just highly stimulated, that will motivate me to go harder at work. I can just continue to press down these deep internal rooted things that are really bothering me. And I kind of ripped that Band-Aid off right before my 30th birthday. I was back home in New Jersey with my parents and my girlfriend, and my parents wrote me a card just like saying how proud they were of me. And for whatever reason, I just started like weeping and bawling my eyes out. And I hadn't cried. I hadn't wept in like a very long time. And so that was a sign that something wasn't internally right. And so I quit those stimulants for 2 weeks. Kratom was the way bigger issue for me, where I quit for 2 weeks, was proud of that, and then got back into my old patterns in Austin and was like, dude, let me just drink like a bottle before I go to work. I'll be fine. I'll just do a bottle. That bottle turned back into 4 bottles. By the end of July, I was drinking 6 bottles a day, stressed out, looked like shit in the mirror, didn't feel like I was showing up as like the best boyfriend to my girlfriend, the best friend, the best boss, just not trusting my vision at all. I just really felt like a piece of shit. And to top that off, I'm modeling myself as someone that's in the health and wellness space, yet I felt like a pile of rubble. I felt like a little boy, to be honest with you. And so when you posted that challenge, there was just something in my spirit that latched onto it. I'd done 75 hard before. I got really into David Goggins in 2017 and started running and went monk mode. These small sprints have always been that thing that's like a little shock therapy for me. And so I I don't know if you remember this. I never asked you about the count.
Mm-mm.
I don't know what I think I just knew you were on your path. And when the time was right, if you felt compelled, you would tell me. But there was just this energy about you. Like, it's very tough for me to get inspired by my friends, but you've always been someone that I look up to as like an older brother. And so when you posted the challenge and you didn't give details, I was like, I immediately saw it and was like, this is exactly what I fucking need. And I went into it with that energy, and we'll get into the complete challenge, but it completely has changed my life. And I can confidently say, because I hate to be the guy that's like new at something and starts to see benefits like these newbie gains and tells everyone about it. But I'm telling you, and you've seen it, multiple other people have seen it, I feel it, which is the most important thing. You know, I'm a completely different person, but that's really where I was, dude. I was literally a pile of rubble before we started the challenge.
For myself, for the audience, and for the viewer, do you mind going into a little bit of detail about how Kratom feels?
Yeah.
I've never experienced it. I've done a lot of other fun things.
Yeah.
But what is it?
Yeah. And to make it clear, right, because you've talked a lot about addiction, sobriety, you've had on a lot of guests. I never struggled with addiction to anything. Like, I've always had an addictive personality where like gravitate towards caffeine, gravitate towards nicotine. We could talk about that stuff separately, but there was never anything that I truly felt was bad for me, that I know was bad, that I couldn't stop taking until I came across Kratom. So the way that I understand it is that Kratom is a plant that's primarily grown in Asia, and it's really powerful for people that are trying to get off of like these prescription painkillers and things like that. So when you take it in a low dose, you almost feel stimulated and you want to just have like great conversations and be really social. And then at higher dosages, it activates those opioid receptors in the brain, which is why people that are coming off of pills, a lot of people will gravitate towards Kratom, where it's still kind of stimulating the same part of the brain, but you're getting it through a plant-based substance. What's happened is, like a lot of things, we bastardize these products. We make these Franken-style versions of these products, and we've created these Kratom concentrates that are way more potent versions of Kratom than we should be consuming. And so in Austin and around the country, there's this brand called Feel Free, these little blue bottles that are marketed as a wellness tonic, which is like super ironic, which we'll get into. And they've raised tens of millions of dollars. They do hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. Like, if you're listening to this and you go to your gas station, they probably carry those little blue bottles behind the counter. And I can pretty much tell you that it will make you feel anything but free. It will make you feel highly dependent to it. And I remember the first time I drank it, and what's so deceiving is that they market a serving size as half a bottle, but it's this tiny little bottle. So anyone that wants to like overdo anything or push the limits, they're going to drink a bottle, which is what I did. I felt really good. I was buzzing. I wanted to jump on sales calls. I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to public speak. And the next thing you know, you're like, but I took the bottle. It doesn't give me the same edge as a week ago. Let me try a bottle and a half, 2 bottles, 3 bottles, 4 bottles. And I was getting to the point, dude, the second time I came on this podcast to do the Fear of Flying episode, I had lied to you, and I literally went to Native Grocery, grabbed 2 bottles, put it on the top of my car, slugged them quick, drank a Celsius, came in here like I was whistling Dixie. And that was my life, where I was literally, I remember going to Nashville, anywhere I would go, dude, you go Feel Free store locator, pop in your zip code, find the closest gas station, bring my backpack so no one would see, and I would buy out 5, 6 bottles and put it in my backpack. So like super embarrassing addict-like behavior. And that's really where I was at. And to the point where I started the challenge, I was like, there's something in my soul that's telling me that by the time I finish this, I have to quit. I'm not ready. And then I think because I started gaining confidence through that challenge, it was either day 4 or day 5, I just completely quit cold turkey. And I think that's a huge reason why some of those changes that you may see in me are possible, is because I finally got off that thing that I was so addicted to.
Yeah, I love that you shared that. I think it's really important because, especially on this show, I think we need more people like you. We need more people that are in leadership roles. We need more people that are willing to be honest about their experiences in life, because we put everyone on a pedestal, but we're all human. We all have crutches or fixes or things that we gravitate to that aren't the best. And I think through this challenge, I've learned that I even have more things that I need to work on.
Yes.
We were talking about it a little bit today in the sauna, but it keeps exposing those things. And I think that's one thing about this challenge that's helpful. Like once you break it all down and you kind of have this structured lifestyle, you start seeing the things that impact it negatively.
Yes.
And I think with any addiction, kratom, cocaine, alcohol, heroin, doesn't matter, food, mentally, the impact of walking around knowing you can't show up in the way that you want to show up because you're not high or you're not drunk or you're not satiated, I think has a massive impact on our own psyche, right? Like in how we kind of perform as humans. And I think that what you're highlighting is not only did you have probably a physical dependence, right? Something, because it does attach to your opiate receptors.
Yes.
So your opiate receptors, like you get sick when you get off of them, just from the people I've talked to. I don't know if you had withdrawal symptoms or anything like that.
I feel like I had a fever for probably 3 days.
Right. So that's a level of withdrawal, essentially.
Yeah.
And I've heard people's stories where it was much worse. Like, so it's anything that you have to withdraw from like that is probably dangerous.
Dude. And even just, it felt like I was, it almost felt like kratom was like a pacifier for me that I needed, like I was a baby and I needed to have a pacifier where I felt mentally like I couldn't do anything unless I got my fix. And then just the dirtiness that comes from, you know, they're little glass bottles. So I could feel them like clinking around in my car, clinking around in my backpack. I'm making up excuses to my girlfriend and my parents. And, you know, Native Grocer is a perfect example where I would tell Harry, my business partner, that I needed to stop to get like an energy drink or something. And I would go buy 2 bottles, make sure he couldn't see me, go into the bathroom, slug them. Sometimes, because it tastes so disgusting and it's so foul. And anything that tastes that bad, it's probably God's signal you shouldn't be consuming it. Dude, I would literally throw up and go buy 2 more. So it's, you know, it's embarrassing, but it's just the truth. And that's why I think you need to be really careful with who you take advice from online. Because like you said, we're all fucked up. We all struggle to discipline our flesh. We're all sinners. And dude, I just needed to snap out of it. And I'm just really grateful that I did. I'm grateful to God. I'm grateful to you. And when you overcome that, dude, the confidence that comes from that, it's like you feel like you're bulletproof.
Untouchable. I remember when you first said something to me about it, and I obviously didn't mention you in the post or the story. And you were like the 3rd or 4th person, I think, that had said something to me about it. And I went on like a tear on my story. And I called out Feel Free because they are very aware. They understand what it's doing.
Yeah.
Is it a great business model? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Just so was OxyContin. Right. But that's because money over lives, it will always be a thing, especially in this country. And to make that choice where it's like, hey, we're fine. We're going to hurt people, but we're going to make a lot of money doing it.
Yeah.
They were okay with it.
Yeah.
And that was my attack, right? It was like, you guys knew what you were doing. This attaches to the opiate receptors. You know the impacts it's going to have. And then your marketing is this health product. And there was people that are in recovery, like with time, marketing it for them. I had a problem with that because people in recovery or people that are sober trust those people. We look to those people, those influencers that are sober or in recovery, as like, if they're saying that this is good and I should be doing it, like you're not doing any digging. You're just going to take it.
Especially if you're getting high too.
For sure. And the other piece of that really is if you're going to promote a product, one, you need to understand what's in it. Because I don't think that the people that were brought on as influencers, this is maybe the good side of my heart. I don't believe that those people knew the impacts. I think they're like, oh, brand deal. Great. I like to believe it that way. Right.
Me too.
Because it's hard for me to believe that someone that's sober or in recovery would promote that product, understanding what it does or is. But people listening or watching this stuff online, like they're like, great, like this person's sober, they're in recovery, it makes them feel better. I'm going to go get this. This is great. It's the next best thing. And the next thing you know, they're hooked on it.
Yeah.
So I have a massive problem with it. And I think it's like, we don't promote cigarettes anymore, right? There's no Marlboro ads on Instagram. I don't know if you noticed that. But this stuff is just as bad, right?
It's just, we just rebranded as a wellness tonic.
Yeah.
What blew my mind was when I finally, at the start of the month-long challenge, realized I needed to get off it. I noticed that my stomach was starting to have issues again. and for anyone that knows my story, I've struggled with ulcerative colitis for 8 years, put myself fully into remission, fully drug-free. I came across 3 PubMed articles of 3 separate people that were in their early 30s, late 20s that were that they were taking so much kratom concentrate that it was resulting in them getting bloody ulcers on their colon and them having ulcerative colitis flare-ups. And that was a big light bulb moment of like, you now know that you taking this is going to put you back into the hospital. Or are you that fucking weak that you're going to put yourself back into the hospital and just be dependent on that? So that was the challenge, plus that was a huge snap through moment. And then if you go on Reddit, there's a group called Quitting Feel Free, which is all former addicts, people that were taking anywhere from 4 to 25 bottles. I met a dude that was taking 25 bottles a day. They're $10 a bottle, so $250 a day habit, which is insane. That just had countless stories of people ruining their lives. So I realized that I'm fortunate because I was still able to push things forward. And I think I was lucky where I quit right before my life was about to take a really bad turn. And then what other people don't know is that the founder, J.W. Ross, before he started Feel Free, he went to jail for white collar real estate. I think it was real estate, or you know what? It was oil and gas fraud. He was an oil and gas guy. Different name, goes to jail, gets out of jail, renames himself J.W. Ross, raises a bunch of money, starts Feel Free. So it's like there's literally like criminal behavior at the founder level, and the company is always an extension of the founder too. So I just want to throw that context out there as well.
For sure. And I mean, you can do that here. I don't mind taking shots at people that need shots taken at them.
Yeah.
All right. Now that we've talked about kratom at length, I think it's important we kind of get into what these principles are.
Yeah.
Because so when I first posted it, I put it in the story. I said, if you have to ask something to this level, if you have to ask, you're not in.
Yeah.
Right. I'll send it to you when you're in, kind of thing. And that turned a lot of people off. Right. But those weren't the people that were ready to do the challenge anyways. Right. If your response to like, hey, I need to know what it is before I commit. And all I would say back is literally anyone can do it. If they said, well, I still need to see it first, I just said, this isn't for you. And I think when you're ready for a reset, you don't need the details. You just want to reset.
Yeah.
And that piece came to me through my sobriety. When I wanted to get sober, when I was all in, like dead set on this is going to happen no matter what, you could have told me to do anything and I would have done it. No questions asked. So I think that for me, that's been my experience, and a lot of people I've talked to that have had to flip that switch, that's been their experience. When you're ready and you'll do anything. So that's kind of, when I posted it, there was a good amount of feedback, some positive, some negative. And I think the original August 1st number of people that were involved was around 10. I think that's about right. Some people were posting daily. Others were kind of shy about it, which was great. They were just doing it for themselves, which I'm cool with too. But I think we had about 10 people in on August 1st. But to jump right into these principles, I want to take a second as we work through these to kind of talk about how each of these things have impacted us during the 30 days.
Cool.
So number 1, first principle, up daily before 5 a.m. or your equivalent to that if you work an off shift. Because we had people that were first responders, police officers that wanted to be involved, and they're on third shift or night shift. Like that doesn't apply to them in the same way. So they really just need to adjust their schedule to wake up in the same way that we would at 5 a.m. or before 5 a.m. That one for me, regardless if I do this daily challenge for the rest of my life, I think this one's really important for me. That morning time, I think, is irreplaceable. This morning was, and it's only gotten earlier, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
This morning it was 3:13, 3:14. I woke up by myself, like on my own. My alarm was 3:15. I wake up, my routine, first thing is so my dog Tex sleeps in the guest room in his own bed. Like that's his deal. That's his space. That's what he likes. So I wake up every morning and I've committed the first 15 minutes of my morning, I go lay with him. Like just let him know I love him. We're good. That dog's my ride or die. He was there before I got sober. He's really there now. So that piece though is really important to me. And also, no one calls me before 5 a.m. unless it's you.
Yeah.
Right. That's the only phone conversation that I'm having. No one's emailing me. No one's sending me text. None of that's happening before 5 a.m. So it's truly time to yourself or time with others that are aligned with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's an important piece, because after 7, 8 a.m., it's a free for all. You don't know who you're going to have to talk to in your alignment, out of your alignment. And I think that having that time in the morning that's so protected, where you only know certain people are going to be up and moving, is important.
Yeah. I think to your point, we're kind of at this critical inflection point of being around like, early 30s, where you realize that the next chapter of being a husband and having children isn't that far off. It's a few years away realistically, right? And as you start to hit this age, you really do start to become a finished product, where I do think you can always make changes. But as soon as you sent the challenge and the first thing I saw was the 5 a.m. wake up, I was like, thank you, God, because all of the biggest breakthroughs I've ever had in my life, physically, mentally, spiritually, have always come on the other side of me waking up at 5 a.m. or earlier too. And I realized that I'd gotten away from that. These 7:30 a.m. wake ups, scrolling on my phone too late the night before, chasing cheap dopamine, feeling so tired, getting to squatch at 8:15, showering up, getting into the office by 10 o'clock. You just feel like absolute dog shit. And you make such a good point where, especially if you're going to start to be on the other end of being a husband and having kids, the only time you'll ever have to yourself are those early morning hours when it's dark. And there's so much confidence and change that comes from you getting up early in the morning and getting to the gym before the sun comes up. And it's like you said, it's so simple and it's so profound. And that was just a massive catalyst and difference maker for me.
I find it to be humbling.
Humbling, dude.
That's really what that early morning is to me. So when like yesterday, full transparency, yesterday was Sunday for context. I set my alarm to wake up before 5 just to say I did it. And then I passed back out.
Yeah.
Right. For like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Because I stayed up too late the night before. Full transparency. But I got up. I did my morning reading. I spent time with Tex, but I went back to sleep. And that's why this morning, I couldn't wait to go to sleep last night. I couldn't wait. I was like, oh no, we're at 3:30, nah, 3:15. You're going to pay for that. We got to be better. And I don't know if that mindset really applies to everyone, but for me, it's kind of like, I need that even daily reset of like, hey, you didn't really earn it yesterday. You went through the motions, but you didn't earn it.
Yeah.
And I think that feeling is important to have, because you're capable of earning it.
Yes.
You have every bit of potential that you need to earn it. But making a choice to be lazy and just going through the motions, I think it starts to rub you wrong as you commit to this.
Yes.
So the other humbling piece that I want to talk about, like people talk about whether it's running, rowing, yoga, lifting weights, swimming, doesn't matter. If you finish your workout or you're finishing your workout as the sun's coming up, I'm telling you, it does something different to your life. There's a different level of gratitude for your entire life when that happens.
Yeah.
It is a high. It is a high. I was running back today, coming down Cesar Chavez, and I'm watching the sun break. And I'm like, yeah, give me some more of that.
And you're 10 deep.
Yeah. 10 miles deep, just chewing. I'm like, yeah, I live for this. This is why we do this. And then I crest the hill up here and I see you and Nolan just destroying the rowers. And I'm like, yep, this is what I live for. These are my people. And I think that for men specifically, and I'll go back to this a couple times, for men specifically, it's so important to, I think, connect to that primal side of yourself first thing in the morning. Like, don't wait till 4 p.m. Get it in the morning. And then if you humble yourself in the morning, you're going to remain humble throughout the course of the day. But people are they're going to sense a different energy in you. When you walk into a room, you know who's been up since 4 a.m.
You can feel it.
Yeah. That guy got up at 10. Yeah. I'm going to run all over him. That's what's going through my head. But you see a guy walk in and his shoulders are back, his chin's up. He's been up since 4. And you know it.
You can see it in the eyes.
Yeah. Like, yeah, he wants some.
Yeah.
And I think for the primal side of men, that's so important. Because we're all guilty of what you just described. Laying there too long, pushing everything back. Then we show up to what we have to show up for feeling honestly kind of like a beta, for a lack of better words, like kind of like in a passive way. And I don't believe in showing up that way as a man.
No.
I'm not down with it.
I was showing up in the summer where my day was already lost by 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Which is fucking embarrassing, but it's just the truth. And there's 2 points I want to touch on. Is number one, when I'm saying this, I'm not trying to tell anyone to capitulate or cut corners. But for me, you told me this was going to happen. The first 2 days, I was so excited about the challenge that like waking up at 4:45 a.m., no problem.
Right.
From day 3 to day 8, I would say, it was an absolute battle. And I was just going through the motions. And to be honest, like I'd wake up at 5, I would take a piss, whatever. I would go back, I would snooze twice, probably get out of bed at 5:45 a.m. I don't know if that counts or not, but for me, it was just so important to just keep running the scoreboard up. Yeah. I just needed it for my confidence to be like, I know I'm going to post day 3 the next day, day 4, day 5. Trip is going to see it. Other people are going to see it. I'm going to feel it. I needed that so badly. And not to go too far down to the journaling, the 1 word in the morning, 1 word at night. But the biggest thing I've learned is that those first 10 seconds deciding if you're going to snooze your alarm and get up that determines your entire day. Because there were so many mornings where I was like, I feel like complete shit. And then I started to get in the habit of like, dude, just shower, put your clothes on, brush your teeth, throw some mouthwash in, put some beef towel on your face if you need to, get your ass to the gym. And by the time you finish, in an hour, you're going to feel like a different person. And you're going to be so happy you didn't sleep in.
Yeah. I think that it's really hard to win your day if you don't start it off with a W. You can do it. You can make a comeback, but it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Like halfway through the day. You kind of, at least I'm guilty of this. I'll kind of chalk the day up.
Me too.
If I don't take a W first thing, but if you take a win first thing, it's so much easier just to keep stacking them. Like, what more can I do? What more can I do? It's obsessive. And I think that that's the addictive side of me pushing through.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. But if I don't start it that way, it's like, all right, I'll go through the motions today, and then tomorrow I'll really ramp it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're still flawed as people, and that's why that happens. It's a mental thing. But that's number one. That's guideline number 1. Guideline number 2. So I put faith or spiritual session. So real quick, let me explain my stance on faith. I am a believer in God wholeheartedly. I believe God saved me. I believe God brought me back and gave me everything that I have now. But with that being said, I don't judge people or others that have a different relationship with a different higher power. I don't believe that casting anyone out is the appropriate approach, regardless of what your mission is in discipling your faith, your spiritual side. I think that what's most important is that you understand that you're not God, or that you're not the universe, and that you're not the Almighty. Like there's something out there that's actually a greater power, a higher power. And so this second one's important to me. And I said spiritual or faith session in the morning. If that's reading scripture, astrology, praying to a kitchen table, it doesn't matter. It's the practice of growing in our spiritual journey and acceptance of a power greater than ourselves. And then for me, I put what that looks like is I pray and read scripture of the day on the Bible app, and I write it down. Big that I write it down, because if I just read it, it doesn't stick.
Yeah.
So I need to write it down. But that one's really important. I think, again, you need to connect with yourself primally, but you need to connect with your higher power first thing.
Yeah.
So for me, that one, I would say I'd read more of the Bible in the first 30 days, like August, than my entire life, which tells you how much of the Bible I'd actually like read through. And that's just the truth. And it was because I had to.
Yeah.
Right. And like, but it's funny. You start to learn or remember, like I remember sitting in church before and being like, how does this person know it's from this book, this chapter? Like, that's ridiculous. That's insane. Well, like I didn't learn a ton, but there's probably 2 scriptures now that I can tell you where they come from. And so the way that they learned them was they just kept reading it, and it just kept sticking. So for me, that's been helpful. And again, it's humbling. I think it's so important that we continue to bring that word up. I need to be humbled. right? But if I don't humble myself, God will humble me.
Yeah.
And so I would much rather humble myself. God's humbling looks a lot different. It's usually pretty painful. Like if I can do that to myself and avoid the humbling by God, that's my choice. That's what I want to do. And I think that this humbles me because it shows me how much greater, like the entire perspective, the big picture is than just me, just this little dot.
Yes.
So that's what it does for me. What about you?
This is going to be a really interesting perspective because I was obviously there when you got baptized. That was the first day that we met, and I just knew there was something special about you. And my feeling was like, I just need to get to know this dude because there's something different about him. And I was really hard charging in my faith, and leading up to the challenge, I felt like extremely lukewarm about God and Christ, to be honest with you. Didn't question their beliefs at all. I just think I was worshiping maybe success or money and was at best checking the boxes. But I was like, I know that this quiet time in the development of my relationship with God is so important. Like not Tripp's relationship, not the world's relationship, not my church's relationship, but like my conversation with God. And so to be honest with you, most of the challenge, I was reading scripture, I was praying, but it still kind of felt like I was checking the boxes, but I was gaining confidence that I was doing the right things. And then I joined a really good men's group where I'm getting mentored by guys that have way more scriptural knowledge and have known the Lord for a lot longer than I have. Meet every Thursday. It's been life-changing. And what they do is they require all the men that go to the group to read a new piece of scripture and memorize it every single week, which I love. So there's that accountability. And so it was actually last week. So I'm calling this phase 2 where I'm redoing the challenge with you. My connection with God, it really just felt like it popped last week. So it actually didn't pop during the challenge, but I think it allowed me to check those boxes the way that I needed to. And it allowed me to have that pop moment where I feel as close to God as I ever have. And I think why reading scripture is so powerful is I think it's Second Timothy 3:16, and it's Paul, and he says, all scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. So it's like that is literally the word of God. That's not human. It's literally breathed by God. So if you start to memorize that, you start to notice your patterns and your habits and the way that you think change. And so I think why the scripture time is so important is like you might feel like that lukewarm Christian, or maybe you don't feel like you know God at all, but just forcing yourself to just pray the way that you feel is natural to you. Those shifts will happen, dude. It might happen the second time you pray. It might take you 50 days the way that it took me, but it will happen.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that my relationship with God through the first 30 days definitely shifted. And then again, the last 15 days has even doubled down. There was a couple of different things that popped up, like opportunities that I was really confused about. I didn't know what to do. And I literally just turned it over. And it was like, this is an opportunity for me to practice my faith and see what happens. And know that no matter what happens in this journey, like the outcome is, that's what's meant to be. And that's what's in God's plan.
Yeah.
And that detachment, I think, provided me with a couple of different things that I never thought to even be possible, right? To say no to one thing to gain so much, or to turn down financial success in the moment to gain so much. And that's why I think it's important. Like, you have to make money to survive. That's just, it is what it is.
It just is what it is.
But if you're in a position or you have an opportunity to choose your purpose over your pockets, you got to do it. And I think that that's kind of what popped up for me. It was scary. It was terrifying, but it was like, this is what we're going to do. And I really felt like it was God calling me to lean into my faith. And that's what I did. And he showed up. Like, and it wasn't like a lot of time either.
A couple days.
So I think without this challenge though, and like that repetitive, like scripture and praying, I'm not sure I would have leaned into it the same way. So to your point, it's not about being perfect day 1. It's not even about being perfect day 50, because you're not going to be perfect
Not
ever.
at all.
But if you're closer, you're better.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's the ultimate goal there. Number 3, you brought this up, and it's an important one. And the feedback that I got from the other people that were doing the challenge is this was really interesting to them as well. But it's journal 1 word morning and night. I put in here, be intentional with this. That word must be a feeling. As you progress through the 31 days or 30 days, you will see the point of this. What's funny is the point of this is different for every single person, but I can tell you what it did for me. In the morning, a lot of times when I wake up, I got to give a little more context here. So I hate to like throw this for a loop, but I feel like this is an important piece of it. The other big thing that happened during August is I tried to pursue a running goal, a PR. And that PR, it started at 300 miles in the month. And my coach, Matt Johnson, said, no, dude, like you're going to do 360. And as we got closer to that number, I was like, well, what would it take to average a half marathon a day for an entire month? And that number was 406. So I was running essentially every day, nothing less than 10 miles. And I think the longest was 26. So for me, that word every morning was fear. Like I was scared I wasn't going to be able to complete my run. And then I would read the scripture and I would just say, all right, God, I'm just going to tie my shoes and see what happens. I'm just going to go, like, you want to pull me out, but I'm going to show up. And by the end of the day, this shows you how like my brain works. But if the first word was fear or anxiety, by the end of the day, it was like gratitude or pride or excited, right? Like that was the shift for me every single day. But I still woke up in fear. And that's just me being vulnerable and being honest. I didn't wake up a single day while I was pursuing that challenge with the run thinking like, I'm going to bang this. I got this, no matter what. I might have said it, but believing it's 2 different things. And I had to say it to almost try to believe it because within me was fear. It was like, I'm going to fail. I'm going to fall short. The whole world's going to know. I'm not going to be able to inspire people because I'm going to have to quit. Like all those thoughts were going through my head.
Yeah.
So for me, it was about understanding that you can shift your entire perspective throughout the course of a day if you just show up. And that's kind of what it highlighted for me. What did it trigger for you?
Dude, it's so well said. I didn't know that fear was a defining emotion in the morning, because when I would see you, the few times I would see you before your run, you just seemed extremely confident and determined, which is what I think a man should be, is like, even if you're not confident or determined, portray that to the world. And then a lot of times those emotions will flow, especially as you start to get a couple miles deep. But for me, it's such a weird dichotomy where time moves so fast, yet over the course of a 24-hour day, a 12-hour day, your life can drastically change. Like a day, there's so much that can happen throughout the course of a day. Like you really can squeeze so much out of that lemon. And dude, especially when I was quitting Kratom, man, it was sluggedness, tired, whatever. And then by the end, it would be pride, excitement, etc. And then I started noticing that those emotions that I felt at night after I accomplished something, they were starting to appear in the morning, where I'm like, fuck, dude, I cannot wait to wake up at 4:15 in the morning, 4 a.m. in the morning, be the first one to the gym at 5 a.m. The ability to be able to take all these awesome calls and meetings and the gratitude that I have to do what I do on a daily basis. I just realized that I normalized so much of that. And so for me, it kind of goes back to the alarm thing of like, that word in the morning will not be the word that defines you at night. And you ultimately are the one in control of if that word changes or not. It was so empowering.
Yeah. You can get stuck in that word.
So easy to.
You can say, okay, I'm terrified. I'm not going to hit my goal. People are going to know, and you can lay down.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I hear people talk about this on different podcasts, different forms of content, media, whatever, they'll say, just show up. Actually, like, I think it was MVDM, Natasha's company, had a shirt that just said, show up. And for me, that's been the story of my life. If I'm terrified, I need to show up. If I don't want to do it, I need to show up.
Yeah.
And I've never regretted a single one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like that with the running in August. I didn't intentionally choose the hottest month of the year, but it turned out to be. I had every reason. I'll keep it all the way a buck with everybody. I had every single reason to stop, pull out, I got to the 360. That was enough. That was the goal. That's what everyone knew about. And I almost fell in love with overcoming that fear on a daily basis. I didn't fall in love with the fear. I fell in love with beating it. And so I was like, I want to keep feeling this. The only way to keep feeling this is to have this challenge grow. But there were many mornings that I was scared. But I think understanding on the other side of that fear was this win is what kept me going. So I would just tell anybody, like, understand, even if you don't do this challenge, the way you feel in the morning, to your point, doesn't need to be the way you feel in the evening. It might be, but it doesn't have to be. That's kind of in our hands. And obviously there's some things that God controls that's in his hands.
Absolutely.
But you can certainly shift your day if you're willing to face whatever it is you're feeling and attack it full speed. I can almost guarantee you that feeling is going to change by the end of the day.
Yeah. One of the most powerful things that I've realized is I've actually realized that basically all of my proudest achievements and some of the best moments of my life have all come from feeling that feeling of fear and overcoming it. And my new mechanism for whether I'm living in God's alignment for my life or I'm not is if I don't feel that feeling, that's a sign that I'm playing really down and I'm actually being a coward. And if I feel that feeling on a consistent basis, whether it's every day, every week, whatever, I know that really good things are going to happen.
Yeah, 100%. All right, number 4. This is adjustable. You can add and do more if you want, but I don't believe in doing any less for any human. And that's move your body 60 minutes a day. I put deliberate exercise. That can be running, walking, push-ups, yoga, anything. Move your body. In our society, in our culture, we're missing this. I'll just be straight up with it. We have a massive obesity problem in this country. A lot of it's food related. Don't disagree with that. A lot of it's movement related too, though. There's a lot of stagnant people. They wake up and they go from, especially with this new work from home era, they wake up and go from their bed to their office chair. They sit there all day on the computer, and then they go from that position to their couch where they eat dinner and snacks and desserts and watch TV. And then they leave that position and go back to their bed. So they walk 500 steps a day, right? When I put this in here, I wanted to make sure everyone understood. I'm not saying you got to train for an Ironman. I'm not saying you got to run 13 miles a day. I'm not saying you've got to row in the morning and lift in the evening. I'm just saying move your body, because there's endorphins released when you do this. And I believe, like, for me, if I sweat, that's a little bit of a removal of kind of old debt, if you will. Like, it's like me saying, like, let me squeeze a little bit more of this trash out of me and put new in. And so it's been an important part in my sobriety and my recovery, but I think it's important for anyone to move your body. This one, I think, is probably the easiest thing to do because as you are, I'm going to move my body 60 minutes a day.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. You would be shocked at the feedback on this of like, well, I don't have an hour to move my body. And this is going to rub people wrong, but I'm going to keep it all the way a buck again. There's a man on Lady Bird Lake on the trail. And if you're ever struggling for some drive or some motivation, if you will, just go run the trail from, call it 7 to 9, somewhere in that time frame, more on the Barton side, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It makes me emotional to even go to this place. But there's a man, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with him, but he's out there every single morning moving his body, and he shouldn't be. Like, if there's anybody that shouldn't be, it's this man. And he's doing it every single morning. So when people say, it's so hard to squeeze in an hour, do this, do that, it's like, no, it's not. Like, that doesn't work for me. I don't want to hear it. And people will throw the balance thing in. Well, it sounds like it's off balance anyway. You're moving your body 1 hour out of the 24. It's already off balance. What are you talking about balance? You need 0 out of 24?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't you go the other way? Right? You want to balance. So it's like, I'm really sick and tired of the content creation, if you will, of people like tagging into what's popular. And what's popular right now is laziness. People want to say it's okay if you don't want to move your body an hour. It's okay if you want to eat like shit. It's okay if you want to take Kratom. It's okay if you want to smoke pot. It's okay if you want to drink. That's bullshit. It's not okay. So I get fired up about this one because I don't understand how you can honestly sit there and tell me that you don't have time to move your body 60 minutes a day. I'm just not buying it. I'm never going to buy it. There are people, I've seen people in wheelchairs on the trail. There are single moms pushing their kids in strollers, passing me while I'm running. Like, you want it, you'll find it. And so to me, anybody who says that, it's real cut and dry. You just don't want it. You just don't want it. There are plenty of people that are entrepreneurs running 2-3 companies that have a wife and children and family responsibilities to their employees, and they find an hour a day.
Yep.
So if you don't find an hour a day, stop saying it's because that's a ridiculous goal to have. No, you just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I get fired up about that one, but I think that's really an important one.
It's so important. And my phrase, which is very similar to yours, is I just come back to what I kept saying to myself is it's your choice.
Yeah.
Do you want to be 204, not be able to see your abs, feel like a piece of shit, not like the way that you show up? Or do you want to be 190, ripped, confident, shoulders back, look like you embody the brand that you're talking about, the product that you're selling? It's all our choice, man. That's really what it comes down to. And I think this is important to hit in on because in the beginning, when I started to feel that friction around day 3, I was noticing, oh, I suck at pull-ups now. I can't even do 5 pull-ups. Oh, I feel weak. My cardio is not great. Oh, I dinged up my hip, so I can't even run anymore. I was at least in good running shape when I started the challenge. And the longer that it would go on, I think the beauty of this challenge is that it forces you to crave friction in the gym, and it forces you to crave friction throughout the course of your life. So I was getting to the point where I was like, I don't want to do pull-ups, so I'm going to go do pull-ups. I need to get cardio in because I can't run, so I'm going to go do the rogue bike or the assault bike or the rowing machine. And those things that I thought were weaknesses are actually strengths at this point, about 50 days later. Oh, I'm not counting a workout unless I do 60 minutes. So I'm actually, instead of doing like 10 minutes of weights after I do cardio, I'm going to do a full 60 minutes of weight. And then you start to notice, oh, wow, 3 days later, my lifts are going up. I look better in the mirror. Oh, there's like a new vein on my bicep that I didn't have before. Oh, when I look in the mirror, I'm actually like enjoying what I see. I'm proud of what I see. Oh, now I'm starting to get compliments from other people. It does feel good to get external validation from other people. People are asking you what you're doing, what are you eating, how are you training? The momentum just builds. But the biggest thing for me was it's your choice, and running towards friction in the gym was making me run towards friction in all these other aspects of my life. Oh, hey, you're putting off the investor deck because you need to raise $2 million. Well, sit the fuck down on a Saturday and do the investor deck. Make 10 more cold calls a day. Hey, give your employee an extra hour of your time so you can train them up. It just started to translate to all these other buckets of my life. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm way better than where I was when we started.
Yeah. I would say I made a pretty harsh statement around content, and I want to wrap that up with this statement too. If you're curious on whether or not you should take advice from someone in the fitness world, and if they're like what their kind of message is and that sort of thing, my advice on that is scroll down in their page, look at their work. Right? You and I talk about this all the time. It doesn't matter what you did 5 years ago.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter what you did 4 years ago. It doesn't matter what you did yesterday at the end of the day. It's about today. And so I find it to be much more impactful. Nick Bear is a great example. That's a dude that's progressing. People love him, people hate him, people whatever, don't care. The dude is progressing. So anybody who's creating content around fitness and hating on that dude, soft. Like, how? What are you talking about? What have you done? What have you done in the last month, the last year, the last 2 years? You look the same. You haven't gotten faster. You haven't gotten stronger. I don't want to hear it. So I think people need to be really careful about where they get their content and who they believe. Because as a weak society, we're more inclined to gravitate towards the person who says it's okay if you don't do these things. It's harder to gravitate towards a guy like Nick Bear, where he's like, that's never even a conversation. I can promise you, I haven't looked at social media today. I can promise you he ran at least 7 miles this morning. I just know it. He's automatic, right? That's exactly what happened. And he did it before his newborns got up, and he got back and made them breakfast. And then he's going to go run his tens of $1 million company throughout the course of today. And then he's going to lift weights with his employees tonight. And then he's going to go home and do dinner and be a dad. So I don't want to hear it. And I think anybody who hates on that is their own insecurity.
Yeah.
For me, I'm trying to be like, how do I become that dad? Like, how do I become that business owner? Like, I'm trying to take everything I can from him versus saying like, oh, he has this or it's this or that. It's none of that. It's all a cop out. It's all a lie.
Yes.
Right. And we'll dive way off into that in a minute. But like, that's the other thing that this exposed to me, even not just within other people, but within myself.
Definitely.
Saying that I can't do any of these things is just a lie. It's me lying to myself to make myself feel better. And if I'm doing that, I don't really want to change.
Yeah. You in particular, you basically destroyed and took every single excuse that possibly could have come up off the table, which is something I really respect. Especially once I realized that New Braunfels is an hour and a half away from Texas and you were making that drive every single day.
Yeah.
Not just doing the run, but literally driving an hour and a half here, which means you have to be up at least 2 hours earlier than me because I live 5 minutes from the gym. I gained just an insanely new level of respect for you. And one of the points you made me think about is if you're young or you're just someone that doesn't have a pot to piss in, one of the things that I learned is that one of the easiest ways to get respect from people that you admire is to be the dog that's like in the gym early in the morning.
Yep.
And that was one of the quickest things that I saw. The gym that I typically train at in the morning, Collective, we have 4 or 5 of our investors or members there and guys that we were trying to get to invest last year that didn't. And I was noticing, not intentionally, that I was beating a lot of those guys to the gym. And so they would see me wrapping up my workout and I could just tell the way that they were starting to view me was different.
Yep.
It was like actually respecting me as a man, which is like what we crave. Women, I think, want to be cherished and men just want to be respected and feared more than anything else. And just getting my power back, dude, like literally grabbing my balls and actually having power back. It was the best feeling ever.
Yeah. You want somebody to invest in you? Be coming out of the shower when they're walking into the gym.
Yeah.
They might not say it, but it's going, trust me, and be like, damn, let's go hit them.
Yeah.
There's some savages that we work out with, real life savages, not social media hashtag savages, real life savages that when I'm out there exercising, I'm running or I'm lifting, I don't have to be like, oh, I'm doing this alone. I'm suffering alone. I know they're out there getting it. They're somewhere doing something that's uncomfortable. And I think that that's also a piece of this for men that really should be taken to an additional level. I should have put in here for men, you need to suffer for 60 minutes every day. I believe that. And people will be like, oh my gosh, it doesn't apply to you then. That's fine. But if you want more, I believe you got to suffer more.
Yeah. And
because you got to earn it. You got to be willing. I don't know what you guys were doing this morning on the rower, but it looked pretty exerting. Or my run or doesn't any of those things. But because we suffered in those moments, the way that I show up right now, or if we walk out of here and go to a business meeting or meet with someone who's like in a mentorship role to us or a higher level than us, I want to be able to show up and walk in like I already own the place. And so suffering allows me to do that.
Yes.
And I think for men, it's important to suffer a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. The traditional paradigm is, oh, I have this meeting, therefore I don't have time to go to the gym. And then the real paradigm is, I have this meeting, therefore I have to go to the gym before so I can show up and dominate.
Yeah. Because you look different. You could go do arms or shoulders or back or chest or legs for 30 minutes before you go to a meeting and you're going to be perceived differently. I 100%. Promise you. People know. Like they might not know that you just did 30 minutes in the gym, but they're going to be like, there's something different about that dude.
Yep.
How many times have you been out in public and you see a man and you're like, you have to respect him because you know he puts in work. Like no matter what, you know he puts in work. To me, that gets my respect instantly, right? Whereas if I walk into a room and it's like, I'm the baddest dude in here, like one, I'm in the wrong room. And two, I find it like there's no inspiration to pull from there, right? But when you see a man who's putting in work, like, and you won't even talk to each other. Like that's been my experience. Like you're not having these great conversations with these men, but it'll be like a nod.
Tip of the cap.
I see you. And they see you back, and then you keep it moving.
And that's it.
And that's all I need.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get it twice as hard in the morning. Like you better be on it.
Yeah.
And so I think but it's important for men in a very primal way. Like if you're going to provide and you're going to protect, how are you going to do that if you're not taking care of your body? If you're not strong, if you can't run, if you can't do any of these things, what kind of protector are you? That doesn't add up for me. So next one, number 5, get cold once a day. I think you're probably the champion of this, if I'm being honest, and I'll tell you why. So for me, I love the cold plunge. I love getting cold. I think it helps with recovery. It activates your nervous system in a way that can't be activated otherwise. At least that's been my experience. But the reason you motivated me with this is because I was doing what you were doing, meaning I would go to the sauna first, then go get in the plunge, and I would do rounds to get to my 3 minutes. And then one day we were having a conversation and you're like, yeah, I've been doing that. But today I just said, no, I'm getting in there. I'm going to do the 3 minutes. I'm putting my hands in the water. Like I'm going to suffer for 3 minutes before I go in the sauna. And that clicked for me. I was like, okay, I'm not doing enough. Like this is really what it should be. This is how it should be done. And then you hear the traditional response like, oh, it's going to kill my gains, or, oh, I can't do that, or
it's complete bullshit.
Messes with my thyroid. Like, okay, you got health conditions. I'm not a doctor, like, but you're probably not made for this.
Yeah.
Right. Because there are people that have those same health conditions that did this and turned out just fine.
Yeah.
Right. It didn't activate any of those things. So I think getting cold though is another way to build your resiliency, to increase or enhance your mental capacity. And what I would tell people, if you're struggling with something mentally or emotionally, you duck off in some 38, 40 degree water. You realize real quick what's important. You're alive. Like you realize real quick that you are alive. All of the shit that we worry about and we blow up in our minds, it becomes irrelevant really fast, because all you care about is not freezing to death. Like that's what goes through my head. It does become more enjoyable over time, because you know the outcome, right? But if you don't know the outcome and you haven't experienced it, then don't give me a reason why you can't do it. That doesn't add up for me.
I think the biggest thing that this challenge did for me is it made me realize that I was becoming the bitch that loved cutting corners. And that the second thing, which is really painful to admit, was I was a theorist, where I knew everything that I needed to do and maybe was equipped to suffer at one point in time. And so I was the guy that I had done 10-minute cold plunges before. I knew how good that I felt. And I knew that the gains come from when you choose to plunge before you sauna or put your arms in. And what I had become was the guy that I said that I would cold plunge and I would do a 15-minute sauna, and then I would just like dunk my head in, and then I would get out. And so that's the beautiful thing about the challenge, is that you just are forced to confront the shit that you've been putting off. And for me, it was just this, I just snapped in a month. And I remember getting back from New Jersey, a couple days into doing the challenge. I didn't have access to a cold plunge, so I was just doing the cold showers. It's summer in Jersey, so the showers are really lukewarm, but I'm like, oh, I tried to do the cold or whatever. And I just remember being at the Hive where you and I go, and just having this feeling of like, what you want is actually on the other side of you plunging before you go into the sauna and putting your fucking hands in for the first time in years.
Yeah.
And just did that. Felt so good after. And then as I started going to the gym twice a day, it would be, maybe I would plunge before I would hit the weights, or I would plunge, hit the weights, plunge again, sauna. Like just doing stuff that didn't make sense physiologically, but I just started craving it. And it doesn't get easier, but the bitch feeling that I would feel before going in, that's completely gone away, because I now know the feeling on the other end of not capitulating and not cutting corners with the cold plunge.
Yeah. And my other point to what you're talking about is, because a lot of people will say like it limits my gains. Your incline press went up 40 pounds.
At least
over the course of 40 days, which is absurd. And you cold plunged every single day.
Yeah. Multiple times a day.
And that's what I try to tell people is the resiliency and what comes from the plunge is greater than any limit it has on your gains. I know I got stronger. I know I got faster.
Yep.
So you're saying nothing. That's really what you're saying at the end of the day. It's a lie. It's a lie you tell yourself to avoid something that's uncomfortable for you. And I think that, again, you can find that in any of these, and it's easy to find or justify why you don't like a certain thing or don't want to do a certain thing. But at the end of the day, like, that's your choice, right? Do you want what's on the other side of it or do you not?
Yeah.
Number six was no cheat meals. And I left this one really open-ended because, again, I didn't want to give people an out. I didn't say it's got to be carnivore. It's got to be, vegan or vegetarian or any of these diets. And I don't want to call them fad diets, but they kind of are fad diets to an extent, right? They're lifestyle changes. But I just put in here, like, eat healthy for you. Every single meal, you know what's good for you for the most part. If you don't, reach out to me. I'll give you some nutritional advice. I'm not a nutritionist, but like I have a pretty good idea on how to eat clean. And for me, it's like, again, there's no excuse here. Like there's no room for excuse in this one. Just no cheat meals, which means don't eat something that you know is shitty because you feel bad. Right? And that's usually when we eat like shit, is when we feel sorry for ourselves. Or we're sad. And that's a bad, honestly, addiction to have. Mm-hmm. It's an attachment to food as a way to fix your emotional stability. Mm. And I can talk about that and I can say that because I've done that.
Yeah.
That's why I left this one kind of open-ended. And then in this one, like tied in, was no booze and no dope. And then hydrate, lots of fluids. But I didn't put in here, like 75 Hard says you have to have, I think it's a gallon a day. Like I didn't put that in here because there's chicks that weigh 108 pounds, like they drink a gallon of water a day, they're going to float away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it was, people know what's right and wrong as far as nutrition goes for the most part. And if you don't, ask me and I'll tell you. Mm-hmm. But I didn't leave any room, I don't think, for failure here. It's like, just don't cheat. That simple.
I just think we all know, even if you're not that experienced with nutrition, I think we all intuitively know what we should be eating, what we shouldn't be eating. I didn't put any labels on myself. People associate me with being carnivore or whatever. I'm like, I am just going to eat single ingredient real foods. I'm going to get a lot of protein in. I'm going to eat fruits. I'm going to eat vegetables. I'm going to actually experiment and throw more carbohydrates in. Potatoes, sweet potatoes, white rice. Dude, within a week, it was like I leaned out like 6 pounds. It doesn't take long for this shit to work.
No.
That's the thing. And your playbook should be, if you're questioning whether the food is approved or not, it probably shouldn't be approved.
The simplest way to do it is, does it have a label on it?
Yeah.
Like, that sounds crazy, but like if you go to the grocery store, like, of course there's macronutrients, micronutrients, there's nutritional value to everything you eat. So technically everything could have a label. But if the label is loaded with ingredients, it's probably not great for you.
Yeah.
And people will be like, well, that's, I saw another reel about this, was like, you don't have to eat chicken or steak or fruits and vegetables to be healthy. And I'm like, I don't agree with that. Mm-hmm. None of those? Like, you can just eat Frosted Flakes? Like, no, I'm not buying that either.
Yeah.
But again, that's the play to the majority. I'm not trying to be a part of the majority. I don't want anything to do with the majority. I think the majority's weak.
The majority is where you go to die.
Yeah. I'm not down in it. I'm not doing it. And so if it sounds off-putting or different than what you believe, maybe then you're just part of the majority.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. I'm not going to be there. And honestly, it's less competition.
Yeah.
So do what you got to do. But that's from like a nutrition standpoint. Again, if you don't know, you can ask someone who does know, or you have Google, right? And you need to be really careful about using the internet to find out what's healthy for you, because our own government puts out material that lies. But understand, you can't go wrong eating whole foods. Meat, vegetables, fruit, milk. Raw milk's even better. Like raw honey. But things that come from the earth typically aren't going to harm you.
Yeah.
right? You might have a condition where one of those things impacts you or one of them doesn't. But I don't know if there's anyone who's ever been, they can't eat any of those things,
I don't.
right? There's people that are limited in dairy. They have dairy allergy or gluten allergy, or they feel like shit because they eat too much sugar.
Mm.
But like, I don't know of anyone who's like, I can't have meat, fruits, or vegetables or I will die.
Yes.
I haven't met them yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was actually really good for me too, because I do think calling it fad dieting is a really good way to describe it. And especially being down the nutritional rabbit hole and gaining credibility for that, just like these negative labels I put on certain foods, like pre-workout is a perfect example of like, it's shit's demonic, it's ultra processed, whatever. I'm like, dude, I'm going to just take pre-workout in the morning before I go to the gym. Most of the times I felt really good. A lot of days I would literally eat 2 sweet green bowls a day because I was by South Congress a lot of the time. I knew exactly the calories I was getting, the protein. I actually was trying to eat in a deficit too because I really wanted to shed weight. I went from 204 to 189 at my absolute lowest. It's probably in like a 500,000 calorie deficit because I was trying to lower my calories, increase my volume, and be moving a lot more. And then I even started paying for a meal prep service that Brad Womack turned me on to, this guy, Chef Rudy. So literally he would drop off at the start of the week, like 14 great meals, steak, white rice, sweet potatoes, broccoli, whatever. And once you just start to get on that good rabbit hole, you just start to lose weight. So for me, it was impactful where I'm like, I don't have to just be straight carnivore. I can eat some of these other foods and just train more. And I actually feel really, really good. So
yeah, I love it. All right, this next one's probably going to be the one we talk about the longest, I would say. It's NoFap. So I don't know the definition of FAP. I don't even know if it's an acronym. I don't know anything about it, but I know what it is associated with. For me, what it means is no pornography, no masturbation. And then I also had put in here, no random hookups. If you're in a partnership, like do your thing. Because I understand that might create some friction. You go home one day like, hey, we've been married for however long, we're dating for however long, we're 30 days, like it's off the table.
yeah,
That might be questionable in some relationships. So I didn't give that as an out. I didn't want people to read that and be like, well, I can't do it because of this. This one right here might have been the most impactful for me. And I don't think I've ever had like a deeply rooted pornography problem, but there have been times where I've like abused it.
Yeah.
For sure. And because it's easy to do, I'm going to keep it all the way a buck again. And this is something that comes up in a lot of men's groups or males that are, call it 15 to 80. You know what I mean? I don't know if there's a cutoff, but it's a problem. And it's abused on a regular basis. And I think that the more mainstream it becomes, again, it's like, let's normalize it. And it's really not normal. There's really nothing, there's very little real about pornography. Like the porn stars themselves will tell you that. They will literally say like, this isn't real sex, right? Like there's not the action, of course, it is intercourse, there is penetration, but like, this isn't what it's supposed to look like. And then I think as people, we think that it's supposed to be that way or look like that. And then when that's not our experience, like it triggers something in our mind that we're not enough, we're not good enough, whatever. And I think that's a struggle within the pornography piece. But I will tell you this, the most impactful thing for me was no masturbation. Straight up. Like, might not have always had the biggest porn problem, but I got off once a day for probably, I don't know, since I was 13.
Yeah.
And I'm 34.
It's 20 years.
So 20 years.
Conditioning yourself to fuck off.
This is what I need to do, right? And when I get this feeling, this is what I do. Or if I'm stressed, this is what I do. So this one was probably like the one that was the hardest for me because that was the thing that I'd been doing for 20 years. Or I'd been in a relationship, you get it. Really, it's about retention, I think, at the end of the day. And this one probably is, the retention piece is obviously more associated with males. But for men, I think it's so important to just try this. Like, you let me know, right? I don't want to over share on how impactful it's been, but I will share like some of the details of how impactful it was. So I've talked about it on here before, but back in November, I got on TRT through a doctor because my T levels were like astronomically low, like 200, 205, 220, something like that.
Which is insanely low considering the way that you show up in your energy and the exercise that you're doing.
Right.
Like insane.
Yeah. But that shows you also what you're actually capable of.
We'll talk about that too.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in your brain that allows you to do a lot more than just chemicals do.
Yeah.
But was at 220, got on a program. It went to 300. It went to 400. It went to 500, 600. Felt great. I got blood work done at the end of July, and it was right around 500. I retained, if you will, the entire month of August. And then I got my blood work done again, and it was 1,500. So like, I don't buy any of the science that anyone's talking about that doesn't play a role in your T levels.
Yeah.
It did for me. I even like had a conversation with the doctor about it because he's like, "Oh, what changed?" And I'm like, "Well, I stopped masturbating." And he like kind of chuckled, right? But he's like, "That makes sense. That makes total sense." It's crazy though to think that one thing could make such a massive difference. And then it makes you think, look, how long have I been I've held myself back from any type of like true progression in life because there's this massive thing that keeps me from actually being a better man.
Mm.
What also happens, I think, if you're a guy out there, a lot of younger men talk about the inability or lack of confidence when it comes to the pursuit of a female. If you do this for 30 days, there is no pursuit. Like there's going to be, there's something that happens, if it's pheromones, what it is, but people know there's something different about that guy. And I think this is the main contributor to that statement. Like, yeah, you look different, you lost some weight, you got stronger, but there's a look in someone's eyes, I think of like, I can't even really explain it. Like there's something different about them. And I think this is the biggest contributor to that. So this is one, my goal with this, and it's going to be a tough one, but like my goal with this is like, why masturbate ever again? Right? Why? And full transparency, when we restarted the challenge or knew we were going to restart the challenge, the first thing that I did the day before the day one started was I masturbated.
Me too.
And so, and I felt, I'll just keep it, I felt like absolute shit afterwards, full of shame. I felt soft. I felt like, and not, I don't mean that like literally figuratively, but like I felt like I'd given up this secret ingredient to my life, if you will, like given part of my soul back. And it felt like shit. And so I couldn't wait to get back to like this retained model of like, it just ain't happening. I'm not giving it up.
I'm taking it off the table.
Yeah. And I think you have to do that. You have to, because as a male, and again, like if you're a female and we're burying this part, I apologize. But as a male, there are struggles that come with retention. Some people or some men will have, like they'll have wet dreams, like after a week or 2 weeks. Like that happens because your body's so used to that release, it just does it naturally. Or you'll wake up and like and for the guys out there who know exactly what I'm talking about, like you'll be ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
There was one day I texted you. It was like 5 a.m. I was up from 12 to 1:30 last night, just laying there. And I couldn't go back to sleep because I couldn't relieve myself. It was off the table. But the next day was probably the best workouts I'd had. And so really what it comes down to is, yes, the retention is absolutely important. I believe that, but it's the ability to withhold and keep yourself from that quick release of dopamine that gives you even more confidence. It's like, I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
I can push it off. I don't care if I got to lay here for an hour and a half. I got it. Right. And so for me, this was a big one.
I would go as far as to say, to your point, I don't even know if you truly understand what it feels like to be a real man or how you're divinely called to be until you go through a period of retention and celibacy. And so I started getting into the like researching NoFap probably 4 or 5 years ago when I was living in New York City, because it was just something I'd always struggled with, just being addicted to porn. And I think the longest I'd made it, it's like 2020 in the beginning of COVID, I think I made it like 27 days. And it felt like life was a fantasy, honestly. Like this feeling of just assertiveness, energy, power, or it doesn't matter whether it's a placebo or not. All that matters is the way that you feel. And that's what I felt. And then I would feel that guilt and shame because I'm like, you felt what it feels like to be on the other end of this. And then the devil knows what your weaknesses are. And so like you giving into that temptation, I feel like it's ultimately demonic and satanic. And I had a very similar experience to you where it was one of the leanest periods I've ever been, the healthiest I've ever been. This is January of 2022. I tested my levels and I was at 400, which I was surprised about because I had really good muscle density. I was probably 10% body fat. Like, why is my T so low? My cortisol is probably high. And then February of this past year, I was not healthier on paper, but I had been retained for close to a month and it was 950.
Yeah.
So I doubled my T. And so I didn't retest at the end of the month. I wish that I did, but I almost feel like the way that we're meant to operate is literally similar to like an erect dick where you're literally meant to like go out into the world and like extend to the world. And when you don't do that, you just one of the biggest thing I noticed was when I would see people in the morning at the gym, I knew that if I was either having sex regularly or watching porn, I would have tried to like sneak around them and hope that they didn't see me. Where it's in the morning, I wanted to go up to them and shake their hands and make more cold calls and record more podcasts and reach out to people. And it's like, you just feel like you can really make your imprint on life when you're retained. And that sounds crazy if you've never done it, but that's why I would encourage you to feel it because life genuinely does become a fantasy. And then there's also the Christian godly component of it too. So we're balancing the fact that I've had a relationship through this whole period and we've been on and off celibate. It's something that we've struggled with. We've talked through it. We've maintained it for periods. And I think with this challenge, Dana and I just had an honest conversation of like, do we really want to make the commitment to be pure? And even though we haven't been pure, I think it's more about the heart posture, making that commitment together and saving the sacred thing for when you truly become a married couple. And so, dude, to be honest with you, in the beginning, it kind of felt like death and grief a little bit. Because you're pulling this really important part out of a relationship, especially when you're long distance, right? That's one of like the easiest ways to connect. But we've grown so much closer in the last 4 weeks just because of that. So, dude, I agree, man, that I think it's a practice that's essential to you discovering who you are as a man. Life's also just way more fun when you're horny too, to be honest with you. And to think about what it's doing to you if every single day you're watching porn and scrolling from video to video to video, your brain doesn't realize it's a video, so it's processing that as a new partner every time. So these guys that are wondering why their wives aren't doing it for them, it's because you're watching 25 different videos a night before you get off to yourself. Of course your wife or your girlfriend doesn't do it to you.
Right. Yeah. No, I think all that's completely true. And you have to wonder like how much of this is actually like deeply marketed by, and this like people have attacked me for being a conspiracy theorist 5,000 times already. But why wouldn't the government push it? Right? It weakens men.
Yeah.
It's factual. I am a weaker man when I'm engaged in that. And I show up totally different when I'm not. And it's almost like there was an individual that did the challenge. He restarted like 10 times. And it's because of this. But he kept restarting. He kept trying. And it's because once you get a glimpse of like, really, honestly, day 2 of what that feels like and what that is. And then day 3, and then watch out day 30. That's what I'll say. And I tell men this, be careful, because you have never experienced that level of manhood. I haven't. I was 13 when I started. I wasn't a man. I wasn't developed. I wasn't grown. And then next thing you know, I'm 34. I'm out here in the real world and I'm retained. I'm telling you, the world moves different. You feel different. You described it as a fantasy. I literally felt like if you put me in a room with the dictator of North Korea, I could take his soul verbally. Like, that's how I felt. That's how much power I felt. I think as men, that's exactly how we're supposed to feel and show up. I think we're supposed to also be able to be soft with our family, with our wife, with our kids. And soft, when I say soft, I mean like welcoming, right? You shouldn't be this hard shell where you don't allow anyone in. I don't believe that. You should be tender to your circle. But to the world, we're not designed to be tender. Like, or beta for that matter. Like, men are supposed to move in a certain way, and I think you can't move in that certain way unless you retain.
So something I screenshotted that you texted me that I actually think about it every day. You said, give your woman your heart and the world your fist.
Yeah.
It's just so profound.
I believe that. And I don't think that would have popped into my head though without this.
No.
You know, I think that that's so important. All right. Next on the list, compliment a stranger and give a hug to anyone. This could be difficult based on your situation. I understand that. But it's not impossible by any stretch. If you're out in public, like most of us are, at some point during the day, it's very easy to find someone that, you know, and don't bullshit it either. Find someone that you actually respect and say, hey, I can see you working, like you look great. Or I really like there was one of our buddies told me, he's like, or his girlfriend actually told me that he was walking and he needed to give his compliment of the day. So he complimented some lady on her dog. Like, wow, you have a beautiful dog. But people don't realize how far that actually goes. And again, it's not about yourself, right? It's about putting out to the rest of the world what this is giving you. And I think that that's a good way to do it. And then giving a hug to someone, I don't think this gets talked about enough. There's something, for me, I can speak from my own experience. When I give a hug to someone, there's something that's released within me that really puts me at ease. And I know everyone's not like that. Some people are like, I can't do hugs, right? Maybe there's some work there you should look at. There's probably something going on. And I'm not trying to single you out. I'm just saying, like, I have met people like that, and usually there's some deep-rooted stuff there that's not great. But those two things for me are it's more about giving back. Did you struggle with those, or?
I would say I've always been similar to you. And I think what this challenge kind of helped re-embody is I think it's just important to try and be the light. Not in an egotistical way. I just think that we're so heady and wrapped up in our own stuff that most people go through their day or their week or their month or even their year and they don't really get complimented by anyone.
Yeah.
And I know for me, some of the biggest shifts or some of the proudest moments I've had or when someone just like notices one thing about me or something I'm doing and they just pay me a really genuine compliment. And so I would do a lot of it in person, whether it was like a cashier that did a great job at the convenience store or a waiter or maybe like someone that I worked with. And then there were some times where someone would pop into my mind and I would just say, hey, hey, Trip, I just wanted to let you know X, Y, and Z. I just really admire this about you. Like, appreciate you showing up the way that you do. And some of the responses I would get from that were incredible.
I think anyone who knows you knows that you're one of your strengths, if you will, is your world's biggest cheerleader. I really believe that. And I've seen you do it so much. It's inspired me to know that, like, you can be in a tough spot physically, mentally, emotionally, and it's still okay to tell someone they're doing great.
Yeah.
Right. It's still okay. But for me, the where I draw the line with that is I'm not going to give you a fake compliment.
No, it has to be genuine.
It has to be genuine. Not just for them, but for me too. Because there's lots of people that I really believe this, and I've been this way. Like, we thrive on that compliment, right? Even if it's not true. We know it's not true. We're like holding on to it. And it's bullshit. It's a lie. There's nothing worse than receiving a compliment that's a lie. That sucks, right? But I think there's part of society, and I've been here, where it's like, well, at least they don't see what's really going on, so I must be okay. And that's not the truth. You're not okay. They just don't see what's going on. And so I think that it's important to mean it. I think people feel it differently. Because if I come to you and I say, in July, right? If I were to come to you in July and say, man, I'm really proud of how you're handling this Kratom situation. One, it'd be bullshit on my end. And two, it's just going to piss you off. You might be like, oh, thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, appreciate it. But you know you're going to go out to your car and slug too.
Yeah.
Right? So there's no value there. But that's part of the human connection, is find something someone's doing well and complimenting on it. Like it's pretty simple. So that's number 8. Number 9, call a family member or a friend once a day and thank them for being a part of your life. But you can't drama dump on them. Can't call you and say, hey brother, I just appreciate you so much. By the way, fuck X, Y, and Z. Like this person, that person, this is horrible. They said this, they're doing this. You can't do that. So you can do that with somebody, but that can't be this call. So it's literally just a call to say, hey, I just want to say thank you. I don't need anything else. I just want to say thank you for being in my life. I'll talk to you later. Click. You'd be surprised what that does to people on the receiving end. Because a lot of our phones only ring if people fucking need something.
Yeah.
And to get a call and to answer it, and that person actually doesn't need anything, they just want to say thank you for being in my life, that gives you an additional level of power too, right? Of fuel. And so I think that this one was important. And again, this principle is to pull you out of self. So I don't know what you got out of that one.
This might sound fucked up, but I actually realized when you were speaking, I think on a subconscious level, part of why I keep my phone on D&D 24/7, which is really stupid for business, by the way, is I'm so conditioned to people calling me because they need something. And I just honestly got tired of it. I think what the call made me realize, and sometimes I actually do it in person too, just to like Nolan or Carlisle that I work with. It just made me realize how conditioned we are to actually be negative. And so while I was wrapping up the challenge, I started rereading this book. Everyone knows about it, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And you read it and you're like, this is bullshit. This is pseudoscience. I need to be hard, whatever, which is really, I think, common when you do this challenge, especially if you're retaining, is you just become really hard in more ways than one. But I just realized just how many of the words were coming out of my mouth to other people were negative. And just being able to compliment someone, thank them, see if they need help with anything. It's like, this is how I should be with everyone. Why am I speaking this negativity into existence?
What it really does too is makes you realize who in your life is actually a positive influence.
Definitely.
Because there are certain names that pop up on my phone, and I will tell you right now, this is just the truth. And that reaction is like, I can't do it.
I can't do it.
I can't do it right now. And if that's the energy you get from somebody, what this 30-day deal did for me is they had to go. And those aren't easy, especially if you care, but they have to go. And then I'm not saying there's never a seat at the table, right? But you can't come back until you're ready to starve.
Yeah.
And I think that hits so many people as harsh, and they don't understand it and they don't get it. And that's okay. Right. But if that's the energy you're bringing to the table, my table's not for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would expect you to tell me that, right? If you're like, Trip, you're just showing up shitty. Like you're negative, you're pessimistic, you're not inspiring anyone. You're so, wrapped up in yourself that you could give a shit less about being of service or helping others. If you came to me with that, I would receive it. I might look at you like you're fucking crazy, but I would receive it. And I think that's so important for men, is to have someone that will call you out in your life and say, hey, I love you. I want the world for you, but I refuse to sit here and let you play this game, play this lie out any further with me. You got to go find somebody else to dump it on. And I think that that's something in our culture that we could be better at as men. It's a little different with women, but I expect you to hold me to a standard. I don't want you in my circle if you're not holding me to a standard. The circle's not for you. The table's not for you, because there is a standard. And I think that that's okay. There's this big misconception that everybody should get your love. That's bullshit in my book. Like love is earned, right? And it's daily. And I think that that's important to register here, because if you did something messed up yesterday, that doesn't mean you can't earn my love today.
Yeah.
But you got to show up ready to earn it, because I'm going to pour that same thing into you. Subconsciously, that's what's going to happen. I already know it. You pour into me, I'm going to pour into you. I pour into you. Unfortunately, I expect you to pour back when you can, right? There's people in situations that they can't pour back into you. I understand that. But if it's by choice, I'm not okay with that. Like the addiction recovery world is a perfect thing to speak on here. There are people willing to show up and give everything they have in order to get another day of life. That's all I need from you. I don't need any more, right? I'll pour into you. But if you just want to talk about it for 30 days, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and not do anything about it, that's a choice. You have the awareness. You're making the choice to not do it. So for me, I think that that's important when you start going through this daily challenge. Understand who brings what to your life, and then also understand what you bring to their life.
Yeah.
Because if you're not putting shit in, you need to register that too. You need to understand, like, okay, well, I'm the one falling short. That happened to me during this daily challenge. There were relationships that people were pouring into me. I wasn't giving the same back. I was putting it off into other areas. And it's hard because guess what happened? One of those people cut me off because they were pouring into me and I wasn't pouring into them. And you know what? I deserved that shit. And it is a hard lesson to learn. And I'm willing to do the work to earn their forgiveness and prove to them that not only am I worthy of their love, but I want to be able to give them what they've given me.
Yeah.
And that's just me being vulnerable. So, but that's part of the human nature, like our flaws. The people that I cut off, again, they can come back. I'll forgive them, but show up. I'm going to show up for this relationship that I failed in, right? That I didn't show up in. And like, it feels like almost losing a best friend sometimes.
It does.
You know what I mean? And I think that that's part of the human experience. Like sometimes you gotta burn the bridge that far to realize you've made a mistake. And I think it's okay to earn that back. But that's probably a lot deeper than what that read, but that's kind of what it provided for me.
Yeah. I would say, just to add to what you said, I think that the biggest theme for me that's kind of smacking me right now is, with all these steps, is just overcoming cowardice. And I think about overcoming cowardice, the concept of friendships and what does it mean to actually be a great friend and a great brother. And I really just reevaluated a lot of my close friendships. And I just said, am I enabling this person where behind their back, I don't agree with their decisions? I'm telling my friends about the decisions that I don't agree with that this friend is making, yet I'm too much of a coward to confront that because they might blow up or they might throw shade in my face for the things that I've done. And I just want people in my corner that will call me out when I need to be called out. And I just pray that I have the courage to call out my friends when they need to be called out too, in a loving, because I love them and I want them to get better. And I don't want to see them self-destruct because I don't have the tools to call them out on that stuff.
The person that cut me off was because they loved me. Like they needed me to learn. And it should sting. It does sting. But if specifically with men, if I cut you off and it's because I see myself in you. I see what you're going through. I see what's going on.
I've been there.
Yeah. Like I've been in your shoes and I'm watching you not being willing to take a step. No one says run a marathon. Just take a fucking step. Like just show up and then I'm all in. But if you're not willing to take that step, I'm not going to come pick your ass up, because that's what people did for me for a long time. And guess what? I never faced any of my reality. I always had somebody like protecting me or pulling me out of bad situations or covering up for me. And I'm grateful for them. I love them. Like that's someone, you know, honestly being like a guardian angel, that sort of thing. Like I'm so grateful for it. But the first time someone didn't enable me, it was my mom. That's the one I'm the most grateful for.
Yeah.
And it was the hardest to swallow. I was like, my instant reaction to that was like being upset and being rude and frustrated and all these things. And the reality was that's what got me to switch. Right. So if I'm trying to do that, that's what I'm trying to help create.
Yes.
but I'm imperfect at it. I can tell you that, because obviously people have to cut me off
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not showing up appropriately.
But you're progressing.
But I'm
That's all that
trying to
matters.
just like, I'm learning.
Yeah.
Right. And I think life is learning.
That's all it is, man.
And so I just want to keep learning. And I think that it's important. I learned this in recovery, but I think it's important in everyone's life. You're going to fuck up. You're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. I do it daily. What's important is once you gain the awareness of that mistake, is that you do everything in your power to try to make it right, fix it, move forward. Sometimes that means you might lose that person forever, but don't lose the lesson, right? The lesson needs to remain.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to repeat it.
No.
You've already learned. So that's a big one. This next one I put in here, daily photo for your eyes only. Because I think a lot of people will say, like, I've seen creepy challenges where people are like, hey, send in your daily photo. I don't want to see it. If you want to share it, great. Like you sent me, I don't know how many mirror shots.
All of them.
Yeah. And, which is great. Like, it doesn't bother me. I'm saying, like, that shouldn't be required. It's for you.
Yeah.
The fact that you did it, I'm cool with it, because then I can see your growth, right? And like, kind of, I watched your body transform.
Yeah.
But I saw it in your eyes first, which is crazy. Like, your eyes will change before your body, but the body follows the eyes. And I think that with you have like a scowl almost, like a very intentional look when you're engaged. You're like, I'm here right now. I'm willing to participate. Like, let's do this. And that night we had that conversation around the campfire. So that would have been late October 23.
Yeah.
That's what I got from you that night. Like, you were locked in. And then I saw different phases of you where that wasn't the case, or it was like scurry off a little bit. You know what I mean? But I watched you take that back. And I think that's what was so powerful with just the photos. Like, the way you, like, day one, your photo, like, your like shoulders are kind of rolled. Like, you're kind of just like, all right, well, take this fucking photo.
Massive dark circles under my eyes.
Yeah. Puffy everywhere.
Yeah.
Day 30, you're in the mirror and you're like, I mean, just eyes bulging, like, yeah, you see it, I see it, everybody better see it, right? Yeah. And you would never say that outwardly. You don't do well at receiving compliments. I can tell you that directly. I've watched people be like, God, he looks different. God, he looks good. And you kind of just, you don't do it for the adoration in that way. It's not that you don't appreciate it. I think on some level you do, for sure. But I'm saying the changes I saw in you, I think there's no other way to describe it other than deeply impactful. It's right there. Like, people ask why I do the challenge. Now I can just be like, well, let me show you.
Yeah. This
is what happens. You did in 30 days what 75 hard does in 75.
100%.
That's how I think about it. And that's not a shot at 75 hard. I think it's fantastic.
It's incredible.
Completely incredible. But you did it in 30 days.
Yeah.
That's what I saw.
You can cut that curve down. And for me, I do think it's, if all you ever do is just take the picture for yourself, just for your self-pride, that's great. The reason why I would send it to you, it's kind of two reasons, is number one, I kind of view you as my brother's keeper. So there is this feeling of like, I respond really well to accountability with my friends. So just showing you that I'm not bullshitting my way through this challenge, that every single day there's tangible progress. There's just something for me that motivates me. And I also want to make you proud as a friend too, outside of making myself proud. What I would do is I would send you that picture, and then I would say, day 3 of no Kratom, day 4, day 14, day 30, whatever. And the reason why I would do that is I told you, you were the first person I told outside of Dana about my struggles. And you were the one that was like, point blank, you have to get off that shit. And then I got off of it. We had a conversation about it, and I didn't tell you because I got back on the path. And then when I finally was ready to quit, you were like, yeah, I know you're still on Kratom, because if you got off of it, you would have been telling me about it. And then you just went radio dark, because you know how addicts work.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was that skin in the game of, I'm doing everything I say I'm going to do, and I'm trying to exceed that. And then I'm also showing you that I'm kicking this shit for good. And that was really important for me, which is why I would send you those pictures every day.
Yeah. No, I appreciated them. And I sent you a few back on different occasions, but I think what's great about it, especially amongst men, you should always be in competition with yourself first. But man, it's something powerful when your circle is like everyone's going after it, and you know if you're the one bullshitting.
100%. I've been the one bullshitting multiple times.
Me too. And it's like, fuck, let me go hit. This happened the other night. I was sitting there. It was like I don't know what you had going on. You were like, oh, I know exactly what happened. So the other thing that I'll share with the audience, Brett and I had an agreement. If we talk shit on anyone amongst each other, that we owe push-ups to try to limit the amount of shit we were talking. Full transparency.
Yep.
Brett said something, and then sent me a video. It looked like you're in front of the Austin Public Library. I don't know if that's true.
I was outside of a Cafe Benu off South Congress. I was at a coffee shop doing some work.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like sits the phone down on the sidewalk. People are walking by. It's still daylight and shit. He just starts hitting these push-ups. And I think this is why it's so important to have the right circle. I hadn't talked shit in that conversation, but I had talked shit that day. Fuck. Like, let me go get this in.
Yep.
Let me hit this. Or like, I think that it's absolutely critical for men to have a strong circle.
Mm-hmm.
And choose people that you view or you look up to first, that you're inspired by, as something to pursue almost. Be careful with that though. Make sure that there's someone who's also obsessed with their own growth, because you will surpass them. That just happens. And then I would say the other people to bring into your circle are the people that want it, but don't have it yet.
Yeah.
Like there has to be that blend.
Yes.
Because you have to work hard for the guy that wants it and doesn't have it yet to show him that he can have it if he just keeps working.
Yeah.
And then you need that person ahead of you that's still progressing to show like the same thing that you're showing the other person. It's like this chain effect.
Yeah. And
so I think that that's really important. So I'm appreciative for my circle. Unfortunately, it's gotten smaller.
Yeah. That's what happens.
That's what happens. And so I think, but it removes the people pleasing side of you.
Yeah.
As a man, especially retained.
Yeah.
You don't care. Like I'm not here to please you.
No.
I'm here to be real with you. And that's it.
Yeah.
All right. So as we've wrapped through the first 10 principles, there's one left. And this one's really, I don't think holds much importance to the entire challenge, but I wanted to put it in here so people could connect if they wanted to connect. But I put it in here, if you want to connect with others doing the challenge, then daily post on your story of what day you are in the count. And I said, feel free to tag me and I'll repost. That way, if people wanted to be connected with or wanted to connect with others, they could find their handles and then go about it that way. I didn't like the thought of like putting everybody in a group message. Like, I think that gets weird and creepy sometimes. So it was like, keep it kind of separated in that way. But that really wasn't a principle. It was just kind of a rule of the challenge. Yeah, we talked about a lot, but that's it in a nutshell. That's really the roots of it. I think what's more important is there's actual evidence now of what it will give you if you're willing to do it.
Yeah.
And so if you're out there and you're listening or you're watching and you're like looking for that thing, or you have this, if this is pulling at you, then just say yes. It's that simple. Just say yes. And you might fall short on day 1 or day 2 or day 17. But you have to keep showing up. That's life. You know, this person that I was talking about that cut me off, they were doing the 75 hard. And they started it, I want to say back in June. That makes sense. The first time. Had to restart a few times. And it was for things that honestly, there was a couple times I was like, I wouldn't restart it for that. Like it was like, forgot to take a photo. And I'm like, but you hit all the workouts, you read, you drank your gallon of water, you just forgot the photo. But this person was like, no, like these are the rules. I must restart. And they just completed it on September 10th. So last Monday was the last day of the 75 hard. But I can tell you that from knowing that person, their viewpoint on life after just doing that has shifted drastically. and who they let around them has shifted.
Mm.
And I think it's part of the reason that I got cut off, right? In a positive way, because I wasn't showing up appropriately. Point being, just show up, just say yes. If you fall short, understand that that's because you're human. Just start over, right? Don't throw in the towel. Find a way to make it work. Nothing in here is impossible. There's single mothers that did it, made it 30 days, with 3 kids. I'm pretty sure they're strapped for time and a full-time job and all these other millions of things going on, but they did it. And their response or their feedback was, this changed my life. Your response, your feedback is, this changed my life. My response, my feedback, this changed my life. If you don't want to listen, that's fine. But that's your choice. And I think you brought that up earlier, and I think so much of life is about that.
Mm.
What do you want? What are you going to do about it? And the answer needs to be anything. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
But with all that being said, do you have anything else to add on to this?
The only thing I would add is that if you're listening to this and you're really comfortable with the direction of your life and you feel good and you're checking those boxes, that's amazing. But if there's probably people that are out there that just feel like something is missing, I really felt like 90% of Brett was just locked up inside of me. And I knew the things that I needed to be doing. I just couldn't muster myself to do it. And that's why I think these challenges are so important, because you hear the term, oh, change your life in 30 days, right? Oh, you can transform in 30 days. You can be unrecognizable in 30 days. You hear that so often, but we're programmed to think that that's bullshit. But we are so unbelievably powerful. And the reason why this was so impactful for me is it included a list of things that I knew that I should have been doing every day that I didn't have the courage to do.
Mm.
And everything on the other side of that is gravy, which is why we both decided to restart. And my intention is to do it every single day through the rest of the year, because I want to go into 2025 just knowing that it's going to be the best year of my life. And I just don't want to leave any potential on the table. I know you don't want to leave any potential on the table. And just tapping into this thing with you, just feel like it's brought us so much closer. And I just have so much admiration and respect and love and gratitude for you, because I don't know where I would be right now without that. Kind of makes me emotional to talk about, but it's just, it's been the biggest differentiator. It's been the highlight of my 2024. So thank you.
Of course, man. Wrap it on a high note.
Yeah.
Because you got me all teared up too. If you're watching today and you think my hat's cool or Brett's shirt's cool, we got merch now.
Which it is.
We got merch. And it's comfort colors. Those of you who don't know, I don't think there's a better cotton shirt.
Dude.
I didn't skimp. We didn't buy cheap material, nothing.
It's not your way.
No, we spent the money. If you want one, get at me. They're going to go on the website soon, maybe even by the time this comes out. But shirts, hats, that's where we're starting. We'll see where it goes. But to give a quick story on the shirt and the logo and the hat, the logo itself was actually designed by my tattoo artist. His name's Juan Lopez. I'm plugging him. He's down in New Braunfels. He's an awesome artist, but he drew the logo like freehand. And it wasn't supposed to be the logo of Ain't Dead Yet or ADY. It was just, I wanted the tattoo. And so I got the tattoo. And then when it came time to create a logo for ADY, it was like, well, this could be sweet. Why not do the tattoo? And then, so all of the logos is my tattoo. And if you look at the shirt on the back, it's kind of hard to see, but on the back of the shirt is an exact mock-up of my tattoo, shoulder to shoulder, which I think is pretty cool.
So cool.
But if you want one and it's not on the website yet, which is adyatx.com, hop in my DMs. It's at @tripison_ or at adyatx, and I'll get one to you. Much love. Until next time, peace.